store the data, and it has some databases on top of it, but I cannot call Hadoop altogether as a database. It's a framework written in Java. Got it, Mahesh? Okay. Mahesh, while posing your questions, right, you pose to all the entire audience so that everyone will understand that. To store your big data, MongoDB and Cassandra can also be used. Okay, but I mean, there is something called MapReduce on top of Hadoop, which is MapReduce, which is running on top of Hadoop, which differentiates Hadoop from MongoDB and Cassandra. The performance of Hadoop will be a lot faster than MongoDB or Cassandra and Vertica. Okay. So let me explain what MapReduce is. I told Hadoop distributed file system is a collection of nodes which distribute work among themselves and works in a parallel manner. So who distributes the work? Because I have 100 pages of book and 10 people, I'm distributing 10 pages to each person. So who is doing that? I have a programming model called MapReduce, out of which mapper is something which splits the work, okay, among the different nodes. Okay, I have something called reducer, which combines the result at the end, because the 10 people, after reading 10 pages, I got to combine the result and give it to a client, right? I have a reducer who does that part, combines the result and give it to the client. So mapper and reducer are two different paradigms which work separately and have your work done in a parallel manner. Okay, and let me tell you, you got to code for your mapper and reducer, let it be in any programming language. You can write it in Java or Python or Perl or C or CPP, in any programming language, but mapper and reducers are the programming logics which has to be written by the developer. Okay. Now, let me explain about what a cluster is. Now I had told that in Hadoop we have a Hadoop distributed file system which is collection of nodes. Right? Let me tell you what a node is and what a cluster is.
I have a question, Surya,
Yeah.
Is this Hadoop is just for the processing of retrieving the data from a different file systems or storing also?
Hadoop can retrieve the data from other databases, other file systems, or some from web servers. It can do all these things. It can not only retrieve the data, it analyzes the data, which we call it as analytics on big data. Okay, it can analyze your data, and apart from that, we can also store the data into file system called Hadoop distributed file system.
Okay.
So you can retrieve, we can call it as ETL, extract, transformation, and loading. You can do all this using Hadoop. Got it, Sunil?
Yes.
Okay. Fine. Now, like I said, collection of nodes is nothing but a Hadoop distributed file system. Like, I will call that nodes as part of HDFS, which are made up of commodity hardware. A node is something which is part of Hadoop file system, Hadoop distributed file system, which is made up of commodity hardware. Commodity hardware is nothing but the cheapest hardware available in the market. Okay, so what you look at your production server is an enterprise hardware, and what I'm talking about is commodity hardware. Like, enterprise hardware is something which will be given support by the provider. For example, if you take some tool of IBM or something, IBM or something like a mainframe, if something goes wrong with the mainframe core logic, not the COBOL logic what we write, some core logic of mainframe, or there is some hardware error, there will be IBM who can take care of it, because he is the provider of that particular tool. And in turn, what the vendors will do is, they'll pay an annual cost of something in order to have that support from IBM or any other provider. It could be Microsoft or any other provider. In order to take that support, we are paying some annual cost or a quarterly cost. That's what an enterprise hardware is. Okay. And when I'm talking about commodity hardware is the cheapest hardware available in the market. It doesn't have any provider, okay, and you don't need to pay any annual cost or a quarterly cost to the provider. It's the cheapest hardware available in the market. Like, I'll not compare that with an assembled system, but it's, you can, in order to make you understand, let's consider an Dell laptop or an assembled laptop. Assembled laptop is something like whatever cheapest hardware we get, we'll assemble all the parts and we'll make a laptop. For this particular assembled laptop, you will not have a service provider who will provide service when something goes wrong with your laptop. Whereas your Dell laptop will have a service provider which is Dell, which will provide the support. Okay, so I'm saying that Node in HDFS is made up of commodity hardware, which is the cheapest hardware available in the market. And this collection of nodes, we call it as racks. Okay, and collection of racks is called a cluster. So Hadoop distributed file system is nothing but collection of racks, which is a cluster. So among the nodes that are present in the racks, the work will be distributed and parallelized. Clear, Suman and Mahesh?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. So that's about, so let me go back to the definition once again. Hadoop is a framework written in Java that allows processing of your larger data sets across the clusters. Okay, across the clusters of computers. Like the cluster is, as I told, the group of racks. Okay, using simple programming models, which is called MapReduce, and this cluster is nothing but your Hadoop distributed file system. That's the definition of Hadoop. Okay, like I said, data storage, you do it in Hadoop distributed file system, and your data processing can be done using MapReduce. Fine. Now, let's look at who are providing this larger data sets. Why we need a framework like Hadoop, and where are we getting this data from? See, this is a general fact that we are receiving almost like 2.9 million of images per second, and 375 megabytes of data are consumed by the households. And if you could see here, there are 50 million hitters per day. So everything is data when compared. Everything is a data in the background. For example, if someone is sharing some pic in Facebook, if you are liking it, each like in Facebook, each like occupies almost like 10 kilobytes in Facebook database. So your data is coming in a lightning fast. So there should be some tool which can be used to analyze this data, which is nothing but your big data. Okay. And like I said, data is coming from everywhere. Let's take any organization, some medical organization or social networking sites or banking organizations or telecom organizations. Everyone is producing data. British Telecom is producing almost like 8 terabytes of data. Okay. And you talk about something called Twitter. Twitter is producing 6 terabytes of data. Okay. Some World Health organizations are producing almost like 18 terabytes of data per day. Out of the analysis which they do on different medicines, everything is a data, right? So they are producing 18 terabytes of data per day. when you talk about something called stock markets, New York Stock Exchange is producing 10 terabytes of data. So data is coming from everywhere, and data is coming in all shapes, size and variety. So when I say data is coming in all shapes, size and variety, data can be structured, unstructured and semi-structured. Data can be present in all three parts. The data is coming in all shapes. So what could be the example of structured and what could be the example of semi-structured and unstructured? Let's look at an example. Structured. I'll compare the structured data with data getting stored in a database. Because in database I'll have schemas. On top of schemas I'll have tables. On top of tables I'll have columns. And in columns the column is a field at which the actual data gets stored. So there is a hierarchical procedure being followed to store your data. So I'll take an RDBMS as an example of structured data. Okay. And for semi-structured data, I'll take example of mails, emails. When you look at some bunch of emails, you can see who is the sender and who is the receiver. But you cannot predict the format of the content that is present in each mail, because mail by mail the content is first. So only some part of the data is structured, which I call it as semi-structured. Unstructured, all the audio, video, image files, everything is unstructured data, because all these will be in binary format. When you display this particular binary format files, you will receive only the chunk data, which is unstructured data. So data can be in all three parts, structured, semi-structured and unstructured, and Hadoop can be very well used to analyze all these three types of data. Okay. Any questions, Suman or Mahesh?
No.
Great. How about you, Mahesh? Great. Now, actually these are the self-readable general facts, right? Which part is contributing to the more extent, like optical storage devices are contributing almost like 28%, digital tapes are occupying almost like 11%, other forms are occupying 9%, and hard disks that represent in the current scenario are occupying 52% of the data. Okay, so there is huge data available, and there should be some proper tool or a framework to handle that huge data. Now, let's look at the futures of Hadoop. Okay, coming to the futures of Hadoop, I'll first talk about scalability. Hadoop is linearly scalable. So let me put an example here to explain the linear scalability of Hadoop. Let's take two vehicles. One is RDBMS and another thing is Hadoop. There are two vehicles here. Each vehicle is giving 15 kilometers per layer of diesel. Okay. Now, I wanted double mileage, almost like 30 kilometers per layer of diesel. So what I did is I have doubled the configuration of each of the vehicle. Like I have doubled the horsepower, I have doubled all the configuration capabilities of the car in these two vehicles. Now after doubling the configuration capabilities of both the vehicles, Hadoop is giving me 30 kilometers per liter of diesel, whereas RDBMS is giving almost like 22 kilometers per liter of diesel. That means RDBMS is linearly scalable, and Hadoop is RDBMS is non-linearly scalable, whereas Hadoop is linearly scalable, because when I'm adding some resources, it will give the performance to that extent. When I am adding 2%, your performance will be obviously doubled in Hadoop. When you are adding from 30%, of course, it will increase to the percent of 30%. That means Hadoop is linearly scalable. Affordability. Like I said, in Hadoop, all the data nodes are made up of commodity hardware. Commodity hardware is nothing but the cheapest hardware available in the market. Okay, so obviously your particular cluster you'll get it for a cheaper cost, so it will be definitely affordable, and there lies the prominence and the advantage of Hadoop. when compared to other tools. It's cheapest hardware. It is the cheapest framework available. But you can ask me, when you are using the cheapest hardware available in the market, how can I rely that? Because when you compare something called the cheapest mobile and an Apple mobile, definitely I'll have hopes on Apple mobile. I'll definitely have no hopes on the cheapest mobile because it can fail at any time. So in that case, how can I have my confidential and crucial data stored in Hadoop? It will not be reliable because it's the cheapest hardware available in the market. But Hadoop framework is intelligent enough to take care of auto failure. For example, if I had 10 people who are reading 10 pages, if one person is fallen sick, Hadoop framework intelligently detects that and he'll bring in, the architecture will bring in a new person or a new node to replace the work. Okay, so you can rely Hadoop to 100%. It takes care of auto failure of the nodes. Flexibility. Okay, there are many factors on which we can talk on the flexibility of Hadoop, but I'll talk about one factor which you already know. Like I told, MapReduce programming model. Because Hadoop is a framework written in Java, but it's not mandatory that you have to write your MapReduce only in Java. You can write your MapReduce in any high-level programming language available, like Python, Perl, PHP, or C, CPP, any programming language available in the market, you can write your MapReduce. So that's why Hadoop is being called as flexible enough. Okay, and above all, Hadoop is distributed. It distributes the work among different systems and gets the work in a parallel manner. That's again the future of Hadoop. So, any questions, Suman and Mahesh? Suman? On this particular slide? Okay. Okay. Is this used for scientific application? So what does that mean, Mahesh? I didn't get the question. No, it's not only for commercial purpose. It can be used for. I mean, I didn't get the word scientific application. What you are referring to that particular word, but see, it's not only used for commercial purpose. It can be used for analysis purpose. I mean, when you say scientific application, if you wanted to analyze something out of it, when, for example, let me quote an example here. Let's take British Telecom. British Telecom also uses Hadoop. So in what way they use? They'll have some logs of the users. Okay, they'll analyze those logs and they'll come at a solution or a conclusion. Like they'll analyze the logs using MapReduce, and at the end, what they come to a conclusion is, for example, if they're analyzing the entire Asian part, they'll definitely know how much of usage that particular British Telecom had on China, how much of usage that had on Japan, and how much of usage that had on India. Depending upon their analysis, they can decide whether to increase how to increase the productivity of the business, how to improve their business. Okay, so in that way, artificial intelligence, no. I don't say that Hadoop can be used for robotics or artificial. It's basically for analytics. Okay. Any more questions, Manish? Great. No. Let's look at the properties of data and let's relate that with Hadoop or big data. Volume. Like I said, we'll be receiving some huge volumes of data. Right? As I told, how much of data Facebook and Twitter and the New York Stock Exchange, the British Telecom, everyone is producing some huge amounts of data. Right? That's the property of data again, volume. And I have something called velocity property. Velocity is nothing but the speed at which the data is coming. Okay. So when I say speed at which, let's say that again, let's go back to some Twitter. Someone is sharing some tweets in Twitter. Okay. So anyone can retweet it, comment it, anything. So whatever they are doing, that again is contributing to the data, and it doesn't take much time for someone to share the tweet and someone to comment on the tweet or like the tweet. It doesn't take much time. Everything happens in a lightning fast. For example, when you go back to the banking domain, when someone cites their credit card, okay, so that's a transaction, and that's a transaction, and that's the data. Because when someone does a transaction in the backend, it gets stored somewhere. Okay, a person can do any number of transactions in a fraction of a minute, right? So everything, whatever the speed at which he is doing the transaction, at the same pace at which the data has to be stored somewhere in the database. That means the data can be generated in a lightning fast. That's the property of data again, velocity. Variety. I already spoke about this property. Like we have different varieties of data: structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. Data can be in any variety. It can be in any property. It can be in any form, like structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. And veracity. Veracity is nothing but the accuracy at which you are arriving at the results. For example, if you have some 10 terabytes of data, and that is being put into MapReduce, and your final result would be only 1 GB. Out of 10 or 50 terabytes, only 1 GB is the actual content. But when you compare the output file and input file is very, very huge when compared to the output. So we can say that there is a lot of unwanted data in the input file. Okay, so when you are arriving at the result, you should be very accurate that you are getting only the wanted results, which points to the property of veracity. It's the accuracy at which you are arriving at the results. There is nothing but the veracity. There is another property called volatility. Volatility is nothing but the speed at which data is changing. Okay. If we go to the banking domain, the month-end analysis is going on. I mean, the monthly analysis is going on. At the month-end, a report will be generated, and whatever data that is present for this entire month will be flushed out, and the next month's data, starting from the first, the next month's data will be taken. That means volatility. The data is changing. The period to which your data is valid is nothing but volatility. It keeps on changing, right? Every month, every day, there can be a case where every day or every hour your data can be changing. So that's the property of data again, volatility. Yeah. Any questions, Suman and Mahesh, on this particular slide? Okay. How about you, Mahesh? Now that you know what Hadoop is, okay, what big data is, and what a cluster is, what are the users of Hadoop, right, and what are the types of data, everything. Now let's see how Hadoop had evolved. Let's look at the history of Hadoop. The founder of Hadoop is Doug Cutting, D-O-U-G C-U-T-T-I-N-G. He is the founder of Hadoop. Okay. So how did he discover Hadoop or create Hadoop? Simple. It was around way back 2002. He was working for a project called Nutch. Nutch is an distributed search engine. Okay. He was working for this particular distributed search engine in a company called Apache. Okay. So when he is working on a project called Nutch, their architecture is to scale up to 1 billion pages. That means when I talk about some search engine like Google or Yahoo or Bing or something, it will have something like crawler, indexer, and mapper. These are the three main components that any search engine will have. So the indexer, which points to the frequently used queries, is something should be efficient. It should have some efficient logic. So even dog cutting has thought of some logic which would scale up to 1 billion pages. The indexer will point up to 1 billion pages. But at the end of 2002, they had realized that their particular architecture is not scaling up to 1 billion pages. And they were looking for some helping hand. And at the start of 2003, Google has published its white paper called Google File System, which is the distributed file system that is being implemented in Google's current architecture on big tables. Okay, Google search engine uses some architecture called big tables, which has some Google file system, which is a distributed file system. So dog cutting has implemented that distributed file system into the project called Nutch, after which Nutch is named as Nutch Distributed File System by the end of 2004. Okay, and at the end of 2004, Google has published its another white paper called MapReduce. Again, that's part of its architecture big tables. Okay, so dog cutting had implemented this white paper again, the logic into Nutch project. Okay, and then arrived at a tool called Nutch by the end of 2006. After implementing that, he has gone to Yahoo, and Yahoo has provided him a dedicated team to work on a framework which is called Hadoop, which is similar to Nutch, because it has to have both distributed file system and MapReduce. So Hadoop can be said as it has been born out of Nutch, which is a large-scale distributed computing platform. As I said, it's like it has both Hadoop distributed file system and MapReduce, which can be used for computing larger data sets in a distributed manner. So one can say Hadoop has come into real-time world on 2008, when Yahoo had declared a cluster of 917 nodes. And that particular tool, whatever Yahoo had declared, which is named as Hadoop, has been created by dog cutting. This is the evolution of Hadoop, basically. Okay. Any questions on whatever we had discussed so far? If you don't have any questions, I'll just explain how the session would go for the next 35 hours. Okay. Are you fine with the current explanation on a brief introduction of Hadoop? Suman and Mahesh? Okay. Now that we are dealing with introduction of Hadoop, we have something called architecture, Hadoop architecture. So Hadoop architecture, when I say Hadoop architecture, it's like what are the demands that are involved in Hadoop architecture? How do they communicate with each other? Okay, how processing happens in Hadoop? Everything will be discussed for 2 days. Okay, all the terminologies or the jargons which we will be using on Hadoop will be discussed, and then I'll talk about Hadoop installation. How to install Hadoop in a sudo mode cluster. Okay. After installation of Hadoop, I'll talk about how to configure Hadoop. Like we do need to do some configuration settings, like how to make all the data nodes communicate with each other. Okay. All this, how to set a replication factor. Everything we'll be discussing on configuration of Hadoop. Okay. After installation of Hadoop, I'll talk about HDFS. I'll show some configuration files, okay, important configuration files, and where to look at, which path to look at when there is some error, okay, what sort of errors will occur, all the stuff I'll talk about, and then I'll deal with HDFS commands. All the HDFS commands are available. After talking about HDFS commands, how to monitor HDFS, what sort of custom related scripts will be written. I'll write some few custom related scripts and show how to monitor HDFS. Okay. And then I'll introduce you to the MapReduce architecture. Okay. What are the phases that are involved? Not only mapper and reducer, we have something called sorting, shuffle, combiner. all the phases I'll be talking about in MapReduce architecture. Okay, and then I'll make you to develop MapReduce applications using Java. Okay, once you are comfortable writing MapReduce applications on Java, I'll give you a case study on how to analyze customer feedback. Okay, I'll give you a real-time case study with the abstract. So I'll make you to work on that. Once that is done, I'll talk about how to analyze image files, which is nothing but unstructured data. How to do that using MapReduce. I'll show you that, and I'll talk about a few other APIs of MapReduce, like how to analyze best-selling product in a state. And you have almost like states from all over the country available, how to find best-selling product from particular state. I'll talk about that. And after that, as I said, Hadoop is very much flexible, and Hadoop MapReduce can be written in any programming language. As an example, I'll show you another best used technology for writing MapReduce, which is nothing but Python. I'll talk about how to write MapReduce over Python using a concept called Hadoop streaming, and then I'll explain about a MapReduce example on Python, and I'll give you a case study on Python as well. After explaining about this, I'll be done with MapReduce architecture and explanation of MapReduce examples. Then I'll quickly jump into ecosystem components of Hadoop. There are many ecosystem components available in the market. Among them, I'll explain you the widely used and the best used ecosystem components, which is nothing but Hive, Flume, Sqoop, and HBase. Okay, I'll talk about all these 5 ecosystem components, starting with Hive. I'll explain about the architecture of Hive and how do we interact with Hive, and I'll explain about all the commands available in Hive. Okay, and then after that, I'll explain about how do we write joins. So how do we write UDFs? Like all the functionalities, all the business functionalities which you require, which you might require, may not be available in Hive. So in order to have that implemented, we'll write some user-defined functions. So how do we write that user-defined functions using Java and Python? I'll explain that, and I'll explain about map-side join. These are again, map-side join and reduce-side join are the best optimization techniques available in the market when it comes to MapReduce. I'll explain about map-side join and reduce-side join, and then I'll quickly jump into Pig. Pig is a data flow language available in Hadoop. It's again another ecosystem component and widely used ecosystem component which is invented by Yahoo. Okay, I'll talk about all the Pig commands available. Okay, I'll talk about different ways of interacting with Pig, and I'll talk about UDFs that can be written in Pig using Java and Python. After that, I'll talk about another component called Flume. Okay, and I'll show a few examples of how to use Flume. Like there will be some configuration settings like sync, source, okay, event, everything. I'll explain about all the technologies of Flume, and I'll show you how to pull data from social networking sites like Twitter. How do we pull data from Twitter and analyze the tweets using Flume? And I have another ecosystem component called Sqoop. Sqoop is basically to import and export data from RDBMS, because most of the organizations have current database for the RDBMS. So in order to pull the data from RDBMS to Hadoop, we use Sqoop. So I'll talk about Sqoop. And then we have something called HBase, which is a NoSQL database. Okay, and then I'll talk about all the optimization techniques available in HBase and all the commands available for HBase. Okay, once that is done, I'll talk about Yarn and Oozie. I'll give a brief introduction of what Yarn. Yarn is nothing but another resource negotiator. Whatever we are talking currently is MapReduce. This Yarn is nothing but a MapReduce 2. I'll talk about this MapReduce 2 and Oozie. I'll give a brief introduction of what these two ecosystem components are. And then I'll quickly explain about the case studies for you, so that after this course, what sort of case studies you can implement on your own. I'll give a few examples, and we'll have a quick round of question and answers. If you have any questions on overall session, we'll be taking. So that would be our plan for the next 35 hours. Yeah. Any questions you have, Suman or Manish? and mostly the entire session would be practical rather than being theoretical. Yeah. I'll be helping you to set up a pseudo node cluster. If you have feasibility set up multi-node cluster, I'll definitely do that. I can definitely help you on that. Currently, but in our session, we'll be practicing everything on a pseudo node cluster. Okay, how about you, Mahesh? Do you have any more questions? Okay, so this should be the course of plan for the next 35 hours. Okay, and yes, I'll give some case studies on each of the part. I'll give some time frame like 1 day or 2 days to practice the case study, and finally, if you are unable to arrive at the final conclusion for that particular case study, I'll explain the case study as well. Even though you write case study, your logic and my logic may not be the same. So we'll discuss